Right, good evening, councillors and officers of the council. Welcome to this meeting of the Constitutional Review Committee. Usual housekeeping, fire evacuation procedure. If the fire alarm is activated, please vacate the offices via the stairs and do not use the lifts. Assemble in Orley Square on the green, and officers will assist and advise when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Does anybody intend filming the meeting? No? Good. Will everyone please ensure that their mobile phones are turned to silent and they are not used to make or receive phone calls in the chamber while the meeting's in progress. And please note this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public, except for any item of business where exempt or confidential information is considered following the exclusion of the press and the public from the meeting. Does any member wish to speak under Council Rule Procedure 20.1? Good. Apologies for absence. We've got the following apologies. Councillor Britcher, Councillor Cupp and Councillor Davis is substituting for him, and the independent person, Mr. Peter Lorenzo. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Good. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of March 2026 be approved and signed as a correct record. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Davis, Councillor Fellows. Yeah, I couldn't see if Gabriella could see. I shall now ask the officers to enable electronic voting. Please, councillors, please check your voting pad and tap in your vote. That's agreed. Thank you very much. Item agenda 4, electronic voting. I ask to Mr. Nick Hughes to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. As members will be aware, at the March meeting of Full Council, we agreed to implement the rules, and that is outlined at paragraph 2.2, what was agreed at the Full Council meeting on the 26th of March. There was a request for the Constitutional Review Committee to have a look at particularly the period of the voting length, the voting window as we call it, and the length of that, and to see whether or not we wanted to either make it longer or shorter. So that is what this committee is here to discuss. So I've outlined in paragraph, in section 3 of the report. So I think we found that a 30-second window is probably quite a long time. It's quite surprising how long 30 seconds is when you're sat there counting to 30, especially if you can see that everybody's already voted. So there's a question mark there as to whether or not we want to shorten that window. Do we think that that window is sufficient for some meetings but not others? Do we want to come up with a list potentially to say we should have a different size window depending on what the committee is? Then 3.2, the chair at a number of meetings has asked whether we could shorten that window or end the vote early because they can see that everybody has voted. That's something else that we could do if we wanted to consider that. It was also suggested at the full council meeting whether or not we could give additional time on a vote. The voting system can't do that. So what the voting system can do is we could set it at 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds, however long that you want. But once you've closed the window, you can't reopen it again. Alternatively, you could have no limit. that's possible as well. You could leave it completely open-ended until everybody has voted. That's also possible. So again, another question mark there as to whether or not we want to do that or not. There's some discussion about whether or not, if a member doesn't want to vote, if you were just leaving it until everybody had voted, you would then potentially have just an impasse on that point of view. But again, that's something that we can discuss. And then we've also said, at the moment, every item that requires a decision, we should be using the electronic voting. Whereas there has also been a suggestion that we don't use it for the approval of minutes. We don't use it currently for things that are for information or for noting, because they're not really a decision in that sense. That's sort of where we've got with the voting system. So they're outlined as a sort of questions at 3.5 of the report. Now, we could, if we want to change stuff, change specific bits of the Constitution. I think that's probably unlikely at this meeting. But if we wanted to do that, that's absolutely fine, and we can take that to, or potentially with the agreement of the chair, take that to the extraordinary council meeting on the 18th of June. Or if you wanted to set out some positions effectively on those things, then Democratic Services could go away, make some suggested changes to the Constitution and bring that back to another meeting of the Constitutional Review Party that we could schedule before the next regular meeting of Council in July. So I'll leave it at that and open it out to points of view.
Councillor Everett.
Yeah, I think, I mean, notwithstanding the occasional technical hiccup that we've had, I think it's generally worked okay. But it seems to me that the rules are too rigid, and particularly at Cabinet, it seems a bit farcical, to be honest with you, to be asking the Cabinet to vote on every item through an electronic voting system, when we know from experience that dissent at Cabinet is extremely unusual and always has been, and not just here, because of the nature of Cabinet meetings. So I think either we need to find a way of having a more flexible approach at smaller meetings, or we need to give discretion to the chair not to use electronic voting at smaller meetings. I do think at full council it's useful and appropriate, and obviously it's much easier in terms of counting people voting than to be doing other things. But I think there does need to be more flexibility, and I'm open-minded as to how that's achieved. But I don't think, you know, having a vote for the minutes, and in examples like I think it was the Boundaries Committee last week when there were 3 of us. I mean, I don't think the Constitution should mandate an electronic vote for that. And it must actually be consuming officer times, because what I can see, you've got an extra officer here just to manage the voting, and that doesn't seem efficient to me. Not that we're not pleased to see extra officers here.
Thank you, Councillor Everett. Councillor Fellows.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've just had a quick consultation with my fellow chair next week about the timings of it. I think at scrutiny, I think we wanted to lower it a little bit, because everybody seems to vote in 10 seconds, and then we're sitting for another 20 seconds waiting for nothing really. So I think it should be lowered for scrutiny. I think Helen's going to say differently for planning, but to say should we just end it early, I think you're going to dispel the people that are not going to vote. So you're waiting 30 seconds for someone who's going to refuse to vote. So I think definitely lower the time for scrutiny anyway.
Councillor Crittenden.
Thank you. Yes, as Chair of Planning, I found the 30 seconds to be perfectly fine. I've not had a problem with it. The voting has been completed within that time. I do have some other concerns, and I think I'll go back to the point I raised at full council. We've got a clause that says we can dither and change our mind in the window, and then we've got a clause that says that the chair can end the window early. And I still think that those are contradictory statements within the wording, unless it's been changed and I've been asleep while it was changed. That's quite possible, and I missed it. The other thing is I have a concern from the planning Chair of Planning, a couple of specific concerns that do relate to planning. One is that when the vote went 6-6, it might have gone 5-5, 4-4, 3-3, 2-2, 1-1. I didn't know. All I knew was that I was being told I had the chair's casting vote. I didn't know if this was, I didn't have a sense of whether this was a real split opinion or whether this was a, we really don't want to vote for this. Now, it would be nice, I would find it beneficial if I knew whether or not that was a 6-6 or a 1-1. And I say that because I know that I voted and I know how I voted, so it would have had to have been at least a 1-1. And I don't know if the system can do that, because I understand that on the computer with the officer, it just simply goes, no numbers, chair's casting vote. And I have no way of knowing what the feel of that is. I'd like to. I'm not saying it would change how I voted on my chair's casting vote, but I would like that feel. And the other thing relating to that is that when I looked back over the minutes, throughout the whole of every single vote, it came out as 11 votes had been cast, and there were 12 votes in the room. So if it comes up as a casting vote, and that's partly why I wanted to know what those figures were, I didn't know, and I contacted you, as you know, contacted Dem Services, whether or not there was a problem with one of the recordings. It turned out that it wasn't. It was different people who were choosing not to vote. But when it does come down, particularly in planning, which has obviously got legal implications, and this one that does carry potential legal implications with that particular item. If there are people who are not voting, then for me that's a problem, and they should be abstaining, because a non-vote is an abstention, and I don't actually know who's abstaining, it's not clear at that stage. Yes, it does come up, but I haven't got used to reading all of the screens, who hasn't actually voted. And so, closing the window early for that reason is a challenge. And I think that's to do with the system and us. And it was different people each time that chose not to vote. So we at least verified that it wasn't a problem with one particular microphone that wasn't recording the votes. So I don't quite know how we deal with that. But I also, going back to what Councillor Everett was saying, is I really don't think we need, and I said this before at full council, I don't think we need to be voting on do we approve of the minutes, because we can all grunt and groan and moan and pick up the answer that, yes, we support it. It's very rare that we have votes against approval of the minutes. So I think also with what Councillor Everett was saying, I think Cabinet is a very different type of environment where voting is potentially never going to be contentious, I wouldn't expect. So I would see no reason why Cabinet could decide not to do electronic voting in their meetings. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to say on here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to follow up on what Councillor Crittenden said relating to the Planning Committee, actually, because that reminds me, I did want to talk about that and I'd forgotten. Because that was is this working? Oh yeah, that was an item that on that evening at that planning committee, as far as I can remember, every time we had a vote, the screen came up and showed us who'd voted for what and what the result was. But on that one item, when it was a tie, that didn't come up. So if it all comes up, then that answers all your questions, wouldn't it? Yeah, that was a problem. So I didn't quite understand. So, in fact, rather than you having a casting vote, we voted again, didn't we? Yeah, we did. We just, did we do that? Oh, right. Well, we voted again, and then it was passed by one vote for some reason. So I would like to understand what happened at that meeting, why that one vote that was very close didn't happen to show who'd voted for what. Because I think it is important that we see who, if people didn't vote, then that helps you decide, doesn't it? As far as I'm aware, when we did the hands, everyone voted, didn't they? So I'm assuming, well, like one or two might not have, but most people voted. All right, one person, didn't it? All right. And I'm going to make a very pedantic point as well, which is totally unrelated to anything that has been said. All votes need to be electronic. I'm happy with having electronic voting where they're required. Where we're voting to elect somebody as chair, should we not still have an abstain option as well? When we did the elections not I was looking for it, but when we did the election for chair of the council, we had two options, but no abstain. So it's a technicality and a minor one, but I just wonder whether we should have an abstain.
Mr. Hughes is going to reply.
Yeah, we'll take that away. But I think going back to what the Constitution says, I think at the council meeting in March, we put forward quite a detailed set of recommendations. That wasn't agreed. What was agreed was what is in this paper here. So Councillor Scobie moved a number of amendments to the existing rules rather than full council agreeing our entire set that we drafted. So all of the stuff that we drafted, none of that is in the rules. It's purely the amends that Councillor Scobie and full council agreed. So we don't record how people vote. Yeah, so for the actual numbers, so I'd say the numbers of those voting in favour of, against and abstaining will be published in the minutes of that item. I think that's actually a typo, where it says the councillors, the names of councillors and how they vote will be. It shouldn't be. It will not be, because that was the whole point. Yes, but it wasn't.
The chair decided not to record. We were going to do a chair's privilege, wasn't it, or something? I remember rightly. Discretion. I thought every vote was going to be recorded, unless then you did this thing.
My recollection is the opposite of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was.
We were saying that, Councillor Garner's vote, and then Councillor Owen Hughes and Councillor...
But that was here, but when it went to full council, I thought we agreed to...
This one, isn't it? Sorry, a little bit vacant there. My recollection's actually the opposite of that, that we agreed not to record every vote unless the chair called for a recorded vote. I remember it because I voted for the opposite option.
Without getting too technical about terminology, sorry, could you just...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, when we agreed at full council to make a note of how many people voted for and how many against, but we agreed not to include Dave Smith voted yes, Joe Bloggs said no. We agreed not to do that. It was when we discussed it at this panel, that's what was agreed at this panel, and council agreed to do something different when we took it to the March meeting. So there isn't a facility for us to be able to say, oh, Joe Bloggs voted this way, or somebody else voted that way. It's just purely the numbers thing, which is why if you notice when we do votes, it used to have that whole great big grid of everybody's name. Now it has a bar chart. So that's purely to show the numbers of the people who have voted, which is what council agreed.
Councillor Curry.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to say that I think it'd be really helpful if the chairs had the discretion over the electronic voting. Having used the new system a couple of times now, there's certainly times when we do need electronic voting and everyone would be happy with that. But to speed the meetings along, Cabinet and other meetings, there's certain agenda items that'd be just so much easier if the chair could just move these things along. As far as the timing goes, 30 seconds, I think it's hard to cut 30 seconds down to 20, 15. I don't think it makes too much difference. 30 seconds isn't a long time. And some of the members do like to take a little bit longer in their votes. So that's my take on those two subjects.
So do we want to say that full council will always have electronic voting? but not for minutes, and not for anything that notes or for information or any of those bits and bobs. We won't have it for that. And then it's then up to the chair of any other committee that whether they want to use electronic voting or not. Now, there might be a question mark over OSP and planning. Yeah, sure, yeah.
I was just going to say, with the minutes, because obviously it's the first agenda item normally, that obviously then you can check if everything's working, and plus it gets everyone in the swing of things. I think maybe you should keep that for now until everybody gets used to it, maybe. I just think it's the first item, and it's the first time that you see everybody's voting. And then if there's any glitches or anybody like Councillor Everett didn't have his on there, then we can see before you get into the crux of the meeting.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to agree with what Councillor Fellows has just said about voting for the minutes. Also, the minutes are, well, they have to be voted on to be approved. So without a vote, I don't see how we approve them. But certainly I think that's a good principle. And as he said, it gets people just pressing a button and in the habit. Until this evening, I wasn't aware that people were just not voting, which seems bizarre to me because we're here to express an opinion and surely an abstention is the same as not voting. So why someone would sit here and choose not to press the abstain button is maybe I'm being thick, but it's beyond me. As I say, I think 30 seconds is quite a long time. I think we could probably productively cut that to 20. But then if there's only 3 or 4 votes in a meeting, we're talking about a saving of less than a minute overall. But it does do away with that pregnant pause that does seem to happen, because with most debates, you know what you're going to vote by the end of the debate, which is the purpose of the debate. So, you know, I very rarely would find myself sitting there thinking, oh, don't know what to say, and I've only got 10 seconds left. So I personally would be very happy to see it cut to 20, just in terms of rhythm.
Councillor Curry, you want to come back?
I was just going to say that as far as the minutes go, I think most of the chairs would take an electronic vote on the minutes, and it is a good way to get the meeting off to a start. But with the discretion of the chair, they could make the decision after that. And there's always agenda items that it's much quicker to speed through. Does everybody agree and move on quickly? But yeah, the minutes are, I think most chairs would take electronic voting on that.
Councillor Crittenden.
Thank you. Having said 30 seconds works very well for me, and other people are saying we could cut it to 20. How about we do one in the middle and go for 25? Okay.
So it's just every few months cut it down 5 seconds.
Well, if that works, we can. I'm also still a little bit concerned about that contradictory, those 2 clauses where it says that you've got the right to dither and then the chair can remove your right to dither, as I put it. Has that been taken out?
Yeah, because that was in. Sorry. Yeah, the dithering clause was part of our recommendations that we put as officers, but that wasn't included in what Councillor Scobie had proposed as the changes that was agreed.
Okay. I thought when we came away from that meeting at full council, unless I've gone to sleep for 6 months or whatever, which is quite possible. I thought when we came away from the full council meeting that conflict between those 2 clauses was still present in the Constitution, and that was not covered by Councillor Scobie's amendment, because Councillor Scobie's amendment came before I spoke, and that was still that conflict was still in the wording of that section of the Constitution after Councillor Scobie's amendment. So therefore, it should still be. It's still it's about getting the language right as much as anything else. And I'm calling it right to dither, but it says, you know, you can chop and change your mind as many times as you like within the voting window, and then the next clause says the chair can close the window early, which by which action removes the right to chop and change your mind during the voting window, which is what the system allows anyway. You can, because I played with it and I can chop and change my mind. having the option to close, as I say, it's a technicality, it's a wording thing. But also, is it possible, I mean, because Councillor Garner has also referred to it, I understand I had emails later that said when it goes to a chair's casting vote, for some reason, the votes are no longer visible to me up on the front there. I mean, is that the system? Is there any way of making it, or is it just simply something that I'm never going to know?
As it stands at the moment, it's something you're never going to know. But we have asked for a change to that. But we are one of many people who use it, and other councils use it in the way that it is currently designed. As I say, we've asked the question as to whether we can change that. They don't sound overly keen because we are one of a number of other people, and the other councils seem to be happy with the way it works. But we have asked whether that's possible, but we've not had an answer yet.
Can I just come back briefly? I just wanted to add that the thing about the non-voting, it did concern me because I was concerned that with the way that particular vote had gone, if there was a missing vote, it could be argued if they put in an appeal that this is a malfunction of the equipment. So it's something that I intend to raise when I speak at the next planning committee, is to ask people specifically to abstain if they don't want to vote, because that could lead to something that opposing parties could try and use when it goes to the planning inspectorate in their arguments, and I don't want to give any unnecessary openings. Thank you.
Councillor Everett.
Yeah, I just want to go back to transparency. Really, I can't honestly remember where we landed at the council meeting, because I think by the time we got to that, I think most of us probably wanted to go home. But I am not comfortable with the public being less able to see how people vote on contentious issues than they are on a show of hands, and I'm particularly thinking about planning. And I recognise that there's a balance between councillors being intimidated by people in the public gallery or by public opinion outside the council chamber, but I am reluctant to see us move to a situation where currently people have been able to see who is voting for what at planning, to a situation where they won't know who's voted for what. And I just think that's a decline in accountability, and I don't like it. In respect of most meetings, it really doesn't matter, because most votes are not contentious. I think obviously councils are, issues can be at council, they could potentially be at cabinet or scrutiny, but I certainly think at planning, and I'm also aware that there have been cases where people have argued whether or not they voted at planning, and criminal cases have turned on that, never mind planning decisions. So I personally would like to see transparency, but I understand there are different views, and I understand why.
Councillor Garner.
Thank you. Sorry to labour the point, but I am going to come back to what Councillor Crittenden was talking about. Just to get confirmation. So what you're saying is, if all votes will be transparent on a big screen, if there's a result for or against, but if they're a tie, they won't be transparent on the big screen, and it will be left to the chair to say, well, I'm for or against, and for the chair to make that decision. And it will never be seen as to who voted for and who voted against, apart from the chair. I can't see either. No, but everyone could see that you voted for or against, because you've made the decision, or the chair. That's what I'm saying.
But to be fair, that was always the case. That's always been the case, because
It hasn't always been the case.
But the casting vote is always a casting vote. You always know what the casting vote is.
No. If we have a planning committee, and I have had planning committees where it's gone to the casting vote, I've stuck my hand up, and everyone can see I voted for or against, as the others have, and we've gone a 6-6. And then the chair has had the casting vote. So we've seen who's voted for and who's voted against. But in this situation, nobody will ever know which members of the planning committee or any other committee voted for or against. They will only know that the chair made a decision and that it was the chair that voted for or against. They won't know who or the other people who voted.
That is correct, because that's what council agreed at the last meeting. So, I mean, if council want to change that, then absolutely you can do. If you want to,
Can I just say there was a particular planning committee at which I was at as a member, not as chair, where every single solitary member of the committee abstained. And there have been others where it's gone dead even, where everyone has voted for or against. And, you know, there have been those situations, which is what Councillor Garner's, you know, picking up from Councillor Garner's point. I mean, I've never known it happen more than that once, but, you know, every single person abstained. And it's that difference in the temperature of the voting. And also, the public need to see that.
Councillor Green.
Yeah, I think the public need to see who's voting, and I think that's probably the fact that we're not showing who's voting is probably the cause of the problem that the chair's got if it's a casting vote. So I would support us displaying the way people are voting.
Councillor Davis.
I was going to say, ironically, we're coming back to where we started, which was with all votes recorded and then it not recorded at the discretion of the chair, which I have to point out would solve all of this debate. And personally, I'm very happy. As I said, I'm proud of what I vote, and I'd like people to know it. There were security concerns raised before, which I'm not sure I actually agree that they are security concerns, because as the leaders pointed out just now, at the moment, people are accountable because your hand physically goes up, as Councillor Garner said. In the absence of that, it becomes a secret society. So I think we do have to tread very carefully here, and I'd personally be very happy just to go back to record everything unless there's a damn good reason not to.
Are there any other comments? Where do you want to go from here, Mr. Hughes, with it?
it's over to members as to, well, it's over to members as to, we've got lots of different bits and pieces that we want to include. So are we saying that we want to have proper recorded votes, so i.e. a detailed list of yays and nays and who they are? It would do, yeah, yeah. So what we're saying is that we would want to have the yays and nays displayed at the meeting, on the live stream, and in the minutes. Yeah, yeah. Hang on, I'm finished. Yeah, okay. Yeah, but at which meetings? Is that everything, or is that, because that's only doable if you do electronic voting, and we've said we don't want to use it at. So.
I don't think it should be at the chair's discretion. So I don't think, I'm not suggesting that the chair of planning would, but I don't think the chair of any committee should be able to say at the beginning of a meeting, we're not having electronic voting at this meeting. We need to say, the council needs to specify when there should be electronic voting and when there shouldn't be, and that's how it should be.
Councillor Everett.
Yeah, well, I agree with that, but I think the way around this is to specify which standing committees should have voting, and obviously planning will be one of them. I think scrutiny probably needs to be another one. Licensing, governance and audit, maybe. And I don't think cabinet should be included because I just think it's pointless. And the smaller committees, I just think it gets silly. But
Councillor Crittenden.
Yeah, I'm just looking at your paragraph 3.5 in the agenda item report, where you say these issues can be summarised as follows. Should we have a voting window? Yes. Is it, if so, to consider the length of the voting window? We've discussed that. Some want it shortened, some of us want it left the same, and I've proposed a 25-second compromise in the middle. I think I'd like to make that as a proposal. To allow the chair to end the voting window early if all councillors have voted. If we shorten the window, I would say that needs to be removed, so the answer is no. And what type of items should the council use electronic voting for? Others in the room, I've said that I would lift it for minutes, but others have quite rightly pointed out that's almost like a practice vote at the beginning of the meeting, so it is quite a good idea to keep it in. However, I would then add, as Councillor Everett has been arguing, that actually we lift electronic voting for Cabinet, but leave it in for all other meetings. So that's my proposal based on your list of summary items there.
Can you bear with me? I'm not a shorthand writer, but could you give the proposal?
Could I do that slower?
In the right fashion, please, Councillor Britton.
Oh, okay, so I would propose that we continue to have a voting window, but that we reduce the length of time to 25 seconds. We do not allow the chair to end the voting window early if all councillors have voted, because we have reduced the voting window.
So you do not allow the chair?
We do not allow the chair to end the voting window early because we have shortened the voting window. This is in para 3.5. And that all meetings should have electronic voting with the exception of Cabinet. So that's my proposal.
Okay.
Do not allow the chair to end the voting window early.
That's correct.
What was the extra bit you added?
Well, I said because we had shortened the voting window. But you don't need to write that bit down.
Is there a seconder for that? Can I just add one point?
It was simply to highlight the fact that with a voting window, if we don't allow the chair to close it early, that overcomes the issue of non-voters. Because if you don't vote within the window and you haven't had a technical difficulty, tough. And I think it draws the line there where without that, if you give discretion to the chair, potentially they could close the window early and someone could say, oh, well, I was going to vote. Whereas by having that fixed window, it overcomes that and we don't have to put anything in, because if it hadn't got that, I would want to see something instructing councillors that a non-vote is not an option. You either abstain or vote. So,
Before I ask for a seconder, Councillor Everett?
Well, I was going to suggest, rather than specifically referring to Cabinet, we should say committees of fewer than 8 members. Because I just think having electronic voting at a boundaries and working party meeting with 3 people attending is, you know, it's silly. Don't know about that.
Yeah,
but
working
you know,
parties
there are other very small committees that meet. Well, there are on occasions, and it just seems crazy. So, I mean, I'm just thinking that I don't see why we need to have electronic voting with very small committees. And its size is a better way of looking at it than. I mean, licensing panels. Do licensing panels need to have electronic voting? Wouldn't have thought so. Well,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. A licensing subject. Sorry.
When we make a decision, I think it's important to have the electronic vote. Earlier on, we didn't really need it, but when we made the decision, everybody, we needed 100% agreement on that decision, didn't we?
All 3 of us.
Yeah.
Chair, can I just...
Yeah.
Well, there's 5.
Councillor Green?
So I think this is just because we're not used to electronic voting yet. I think once we are, it'll be second nature. We will expect to vote whenever we make a decision.
I mean, I think going back to what was discussed earlier on, we could just simply say, rather than saying that we don't use it for cabinet, you could just say you use it for council, OSP, licensing, G&A and planning and GPC, and leave it. That's the main sort of 6 committees that we agree at full council every year. And then if it's not in that list, then you don't use it. So that covers your boundaries. If we want to include licensing, you could include licensing boards / subcommittees if you want to do, that'd be fine. But that covers boundaries, it covers CAGs, it covers working groups, it covers anything else that's not a formal committee. You could do that if you wanted to, as a suggestion.
Can we have then a seconder for Councillor Crittenden's proposal? Councillor Davis? Councillor Green?
Sorry, can I just say that we might just have amended what I proposed, because my proposal was all meetings except cabinet. So we would need to amend my proposal based on what Mr.
I don't think somebody said.
Okay, then we'll go with as I just. We can.
Well, that's your amendment.
It's up to you if you want to make it as an amendment.
Well, I mean, Councillor Everett, do you want to make that as an amendment?
Well, I can move an amendment if a motion's been moved and seconded. I mean, depends how formal we want to get here.
Okay, would you like to? We have a mover and a seconder, so we'll go from there.
Well, I'd like to move an amendment then, which is that electronic voting applies for full council, planning, licensing, including licensing subcommittees, governance and audit, and overview and scrutiny. Yeah.
I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, but the proposal that's been amended is...
Yeah, we've got to have a debate about whether or not we want to change it.
Do we want to change the amendment?
What? No.
No?
I'll second the amendment.
He's already seconded it. We're going to have a debate now about, whether or not we want to accept the amendment or not.
So we vote on the amendment, then we vote on the new substantive.
So we're voting for...
No.
The amendment.
We're voting for Rick's amendment.
The amendment, Councillor Everett's amendment, which I think we all... All vote now?
Yeah, do a vote. Yeah, do an electronic vote. Now we've got the yes to a window, 25 seconds.
Yeah.
No chair ending it early. Only use electronic voting on that list of things we just added.
Okay, so
We're cool with that.
the proposal is reduced to 25 seconds.
Yeah.
What's the first one?
So do you want to? So just to make sure, just to be absolutely clear, yes to a window, 25 seconds. No chair ending the vote early. List of committees we're going to use it for, as we've just agreed. But we just carry on the voting on the minutes, yeah. I mean, the only other thing that I would, without wishing to get more complicated, is, we happy with recording the names of people, how you vote? I think that's the thing that we've talked about, but we haven't If we want to do this first and then come back to that discussion, that'd be fine. Yeah, absolutely. That's all sorted.
That's all been agreed and forwarded.
We need to vote on that though.
We now need to vote on that.
Yep.
All vote now. Get to that bit in a minute.
It is broken. Which I'm not very happy about at the moment. I'm not very happy about at the moment, but
Right, so that's agreed.
So I think this is the only thing we've got left to talk about is whether or not you want the names displayed of people who are voting or not.
Councillor Everett.
So I move that the names of people and how they vote should be recorded in the minutes as well as displayed on the screen.
Councillor Garner.
Sorry, through you, Chair.
Yeah.
Through you? Oh, yeah. So we can have a display on your web pages. So you know how you have a declaration of interest list and your register of interest list? You can have a voting list. So every time we do a decision, there will be a record on the website of how you voted. That's something we can do. You don't have to do it, but it would be really handy if we had a steer which way. You could just leave it as being in the minutes of the meeting and just have done with it.
Councillor Davis.
I think that's an excellent idea. Give people a point of reference as to how we voted. So if it's going to be recorded, let's record it thoroughly and be proud of it. So excellent idea, Nick. I'd like to add that to the proposal that all votes are recorded.
Councillor Crittenden.
Yeah, I was just going to agree with it being on the web pages. I'm more keen on that than I am on it actually being in the printed minutes, but, you know.
Can I ask a question? Are the web pages open to members of the public?
Yes.
Because I have terrible trouble trying to find things on the website. No, sorry. Councillor Fellows?
Are we going to include a clause where there's a discretion for contentious issues? Well, I think this is the point that was made last time, that, you know, when there's something that could cause political discourse and some members, you know, didn't want to, or if everybody in the meeting didn't want to put their name to it, then I think there should be some sort of chair's discretion to leave that out.
Councillor Garner?
Yeah, it's a question really. At the moment, or not at the moment, before we had this electronic voting, and we all had an option of asking the chair after a vote to record our individual votes. I think it was clause 17.4 at the time, although I'm sure it's all been renumbered now and it isn't that. So is there might there be a way of doing the opposite? Saying, no, I thought you said all votes. What, individuals?
No, everything gets recorded unless there's a contentious issue where we ask it not to be.
Yeah, but that, what, for everybody?
Councillor Everett?
I think what we're talking about here is the safety of individuals. And I'm not comfortable with there being a general option for to not have your vote recorded or for it to be done on an ad hoc basis. But I think that power should sit perhaps with the monitoring officer. So there could be a particular item and the monitoring officer could decide that it's not appropriate to publish who voted.
So are we putting that as another amendment or?
No, we can just... So, I mean, somebody would need to obviously move this, but
Well, I move that the monitoring officer should have discretion not to record who voted for a particular item in the public record if they think that there is a proper reason for not doing so.
Yeah.
Not sure what the monitoring officer is going to think about this, but we'll have to ask her.
Councillor Green?
I don't agree with that proposal. I think transparency is more important than that. And if individuals don't want to have a vote recorded, they can abstain.
I think from what you're saying, people, as Councillor Everett's definitely included in it, people's private security as to answering to members of the public and their constituents. Councillor Crittenden.
It goes back really to something that I said at full council. There are, we do get threats. We do get our addresses released publicly. I mean, we haven't had any incidents, but the threats are still there. And we have been advised by the police that there are certain things that we should not do for our own personal safety and security. Now, we don't have the same level of risk, I don't think, as our MPs do, but there is still a local risk. And I think it's exceedingly unfortunate that we actually have to even to think about this. And there are people who do feel vulnerable. And I think that I like the idea of it going to the monitoring officer to review that decision. So it's not just going, oh, I want to keep it secret. So it's not just us saying it. But I think if it's something that where it is particularly contentious, and we've had incidences, not very often, where we've actually had to have the police on the premises because of threats within the chambers. Fortunately, it is exceedingly rare, but I think we have to acknowledge it. And I think to have that contingency in there through the monitoring officer, I support Councillor Everett on that. So I appreciate what Councillor Green's saying, but I support Councillor Everett.
So we're going to vote on what's just been included, that the monitoring officer's discretion to rule that a vote is not recorded for good reasons, security reasons.
I quite like the word a proper reason.
Right, can we have a vote, please? Are we? We don't want to give the result, do we? Just no, that has been agreed. Can I ask Mr. Hughes then to do item agenda 5?
I just have a small question about the AGM last time. It was 28 minutes, I think it lasted, but on the YouTube film, it was 15. So we've lost 8 minutes, and it was at the beginning of the meeting that we lost. Is there a way we can get that back at all? I mean, you may remember it was when I was voted as chair, so I quite want to see what happened, because I was expelled out of the room, and I didn't see. Is there a way we could get that back?
Yeah. Yes, you're not the first person to notice that. Yeah, we are asking our supplier. So the meetings are live streamed, but they're also recorded as well. So there is a way of getting it out of that big pile of digital equipment in the corner, which we are looking to get out and replace the recording that's online. So yeah, it's yes, we are awaiting them to send it to us.
Can we now move on then to agenda item 5?
Thank you, Chair. So the suggested items for the work programme are outlined at paragraph 3.2. We're suggesting having a 6-month review of the electronic voting, so that would be in November. We're looking at a review of the contract procedure rules. So if you remember, that was implemented last year, so a review of those. Pledging legislation changes, inclusive of the, so that's the new planning bill that's coming out. So we will need to comprehensively rewrite the planning protocol. So that will need to come to the committee. And whilst we're doing that, there was a suggestion from Councillor Pugh a couple of, probably about a year ago now, about the roles of councillors and who should sit on planning committees, so whether or not cabinet members should sit on it. Rules of debate, that's one that has come up a number of times, so the number of opportunities to speak on an agenda item, because theoretically the rules for full council should theoretically be applied to all the other committees, whereas if we're comfortable having a discussion like we have today, where we go back and forth and people have different opportunities to put all sorts of different ideas forward, if that's how it works, then there's a very good question as to whether or not that's how the rules should be written. So that, again, is something else that we wanted to look at. Sort of inclusive of that is the chair's discretion on the councillor's speech's length. If you've got rules and it says it's a certain amount of time, then theoretically, why aren't we enforcing those? Again, potentially having a different set of rules for full council meeting as you do for other council meetings. And the one that seems to have been on the work programme for ever such a long time about the licensing subcommittee and licensing board substitutes. So we have got 4 meetings. It says the 15th of September here. We're actually looking to hold it on the 1st of September, which would feed into the late September council meeting, the November meeting that would go into the December council meeting, and then we'd also be holding one in January and February. And then if there's anything else that comes up, we can obviously hold an extraordinary or ad hoc meeting as we wanted to. Is there...
Councillor Fellows?
Thanks, Chair. I think I brought this up last year as well, and I probably think I brought it up the year before as well, about the amount of meetings we are having. And I think it's this period of the year where we seem to have a lot of, or lack of meetings, where we have the AGM and then we don't have anything in June, we have to wait till July. So obviously we've already put in an extraordinary meeting, which is going to be next week. Councillors don't have a chance to ask any questions now until July we couldn't even ask them at the AGM. So I think we should be looking to especially with LGR coming up, I think we're going to be looking to probably have more extraordinary meetings if we don't have a full calendar of meetings. You know, I don't want to preempt anything that might be added for next week's extraordinary meeting, but we just seem to have a big period of time where we just don't have chance to put questions or motions forward. And I think June, we should put that back in the calendar. That's just my personal opinion. I think I did ask this last year, and I think I asked it the year before, and I don't think we ever took it forward.
I mean, we have the calendar of meetings item at full council. So, I mean, the appropriate sort of forum is to add it in there. I mean, I think it's for, I mean, unless you want to potentially look at, I think I'm pretty sure the Constitution says it has to meet a minimum number of times, which we meet at the moment. You could potentially look at tweaking that part of the Constitution if you wanted, but it wouldn't set, I don't think you would put in the Constitution when in a year you'd want to have council meetings. You could set the number of meetings, because that's what's in the Constitution at the moment, but when they are would be part of a meeting item, which was agreed at the annual meeting.
Personally, it'd be great if we met every month, okay, perhaps August, because everybody's on holiday and whatever, and officers are on holiday, but personally, the more meetings the merrier, and I'm sure Deborah's going to throw something at me for saying that, and probably Rick as well. But I mean, personally, the more meetings the merrier. I just think that we just have a big period of time where councillors can't ask questions, bring motions, especially when there's contentious items, and as I don't want to preempt anything that may be happening next week.
Rick?
Councillor Everett.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is always a discussion we can have, but I would point out, I mean, one thing that we've done differently in recent years is the February meetings, because previously we've had 2 meetings in February, one for the budget and one ordinary meeting. We've also tried combining them. I think the first time we combined them, it worked pretty well. I'm not so sure it worked so well this year. I don't think these are things we need to bring through the Constitution Review Committee, if I'm honest. I think we can have a discussion through the groups about what we would like to do. I mean, I don't think it'd be sensible to meet every month. I think you would create an awful lot of work for officers, never mind councillors. I know you're not necessarily asking for that.
Don't think we should be throwing in extraordinary meetings just because something comes up. We should have that in the calendar. I do think a lot of stuff's going to be coming forward over the next year or so.
Yeah, whether it's coming for whether LGR stuff is coming for decision at full council, I'm not so sure, because the nature of the process probably means that decisions are being made elsewhere. But you know, I think it's a discussion we can have. I don't think it's particularly useful to have it in this forum.
Does anybody else have any comments to make? In that case, it's 8:04. Meeting's now closed. Thank you all very much for your attendance.